There are a lot of videos out there about why you should appreciate something or why you should love it, but I just wanted to personally talk about why I love Silent Hill today. For those unaware, Silent Hill is a psychological horror series. It originally came out in 1999, and long story short, it was really good for a couple years, and then it stopped being so good, and then it kind of died out. But at the time of recording, they've just announced some new games, and so I'm hopeful that the series will return to its former glory, essentially. And so at least partially because of that, I wanted to return to the originals and look at what made them so great in the first place. One of the things I love so much about Silent Hill is that it's so strange and it's unique in that regard. There's a quote by the original director that really stands out to me. He said, "I never liked the really bloody shockfest sort of horror film, so I was kind of at a loss when we started out. What I am a fan of is occult stuff and UFO stories and so on. That, and I had watched a lot of David Lynch films. So it was really a matter of me taking what was on my shelves and taking the more horror-oriented aspects of what I found. So I really didn't think Silent Hill was that much of a horror game, and it was kind of a surprise to me when people told me it was scary after it came out." This approach to the series makes it so different from a lot of other horror games because horror games for the most part know that they're horror games. I've played through the original Silent Hill many times with this quote in mind, and it just is so incredible to me that they didn't think they were making a horror game. They just wanted to do something weird, and the game is weird. It's about cults and the reincarnation of a god and an evil town, and it's about alchemy and magic, and it really is a unique experience, especially if you look to something like Resident Evil, which is probably Silent Hill's #1 competitor, or maybe competitor is the wrong way to think about it. But regardless, the #1 horror title is Resident Evil, and the two are quite different from each other. I've heard Silent Hill described as Resident Evil's artsy sister before, and I think that's a pretty apt comparison. I love Silent Hill because of the fact that it's able to create an atmosphere that is unnerving and completely unusual. As previously stated, these are psychological horror games, so they're all about getting into the minds of the protagonists and various characters and trying to see from their point of view. In these games, the enemies that you face are determined by people in the town. They're based around these characters' fears and traumas, and so because of that, the developers were able to come up with some really interesting designs for monsters to face that go past the normal vampire or zombie. Pyramid Head, who is kind of the mascot of the series at this point, is one of the more normal designs, but still he's pretty unnerving because he's a humanoid figure with a giant metal box on his head that has a tongue that peeps out of a hole in the mask, and when he moves, it's like he sees with his hands. Another reason I love the games, and this ties into the weirdness of it, is that they have a lot of emotional resonance that other horror titles don't have. There are always simple ideas at the core of the games. For instance, Silent Hill 1 is about a father's fear of losing his daughter. 2 is about a man attempting to make peace with the death of his wife. 3 is about a young girl losing her father and being forced to give birth to a demon of force. 4 is about a guy trapped in his room who is being attacked by a guy who thinks the room is his mom. So maybe the ideas at the core of the games aren't always so simple. But the first few games deal with the fear of losing a loved one, and this is something that you actually see in some other horror games. For instance, in the original Dead Space, Isaac Clarke is trying to find his girlfriend on this zombie-covered spaceship, and in Resident Evil Village, Ethan Winters is trying to get his daughter and family back. But I would argue that the Silent Hill games do more with their premises than Dead Space or Resident Evil games do, simply because there are always psychological traumas that the characters must overcome, and so it turns into a question of, should these people be reunited, or can they be reunited after all of this? Unlike Resident Evil or Dead Space, where the horror is largely physical. There's also something really special about the Silent Hill games, which is that every game is a journey, essentially. Every game is a journey through the town, like you're trying to get to the heart of the town to figure something out. One thing that is really special about these games is that they ask questions that other games aren't willing to ask. Silent Hill 2 asks questions about murder and whether or not it is justified in some scenarios. It also asks some very dark questions about mercy killings and if those are ever justified. These are questions that most games wouldn't dare approach. And Silent Hill 2 in particular is very inspired by Crime and Punishment. It's not a ripoff, but it was clearly influenced by that book. And I think you could argue that all of the games are influenced by Dante's Inferno, just because they are all journeys into hell in some sense. In addition to dabbling in subjects that games don't normally approach, it also dabbles in things such as psychology and alchemy, things that are really kind of bizarre and misunderstood in a lot of ways. And I don't claim to fully understand them, but the fact that the games are willing to approach these topics make them very interesting to me. I really love the protagonists of the games too, which are weird. Every protagonist is a weirdo in their own way. And so it's really refreshing to get a character who is not a military man or who's not a space marine or something of that nature. One thing I want to throw out there is that I absolutely adore the music in these games. I was a fan of the music before I was ever a fan of the games. Silent Hill 2's theme of Laura blew my mind, and I absolutely fell in love with it. The music in the games is so great because it covers a huge range of moods. You have the scary Nine Inch Nails-y industrial tracks with lots of clanging gears, and then you also have the more acoustic-based soft ballads, which are simply beautiful. These are the only game soundtracks I actually own. One of the last things I wanted to talk about was the game's sense of humor. Each game comes with at least 1 or 2 joke endings, which are really quite funny. In one ending, James discovers that a dog is controlling the events of Silent Hill 2. In the UFO endings, the protagonist of the game will be abducted and will meet up with the protagonists of other Silent Hill games, and they're really quite silly. At the end of this, the fact of the matter is that I will always love Silent Hill because it introduced me to so many weird concepts and ideas. And sure, it's not the first to dabble in psychology in a video game, and it's not the first game to try to be weird, but it's the first horror series I encountered that dabbled in more than immediate physical horror. I had played Resident Evil and Dead Space, and I'd watched, I don't know, like Scooby-Doo, but I'd never really encountered anything quite like Silent Hill when I played the second one at the age of 15. So again, I love Silent Hill, and I hope that the new ones are good. Whether or not they are, it doesn't matter because the originals have had such an impact on me that it's difficult to overstate, and so this is why I love Silent Hill.